Everyone, we will now transition to the next presentation, which is City of San Jose Wildlife Safety Risk Prevention by Benjamin Claire-Mckown and Nicholas Gill. And I will hand it off to you now. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Juan, for that. I'll share my screen now and get our presentation going. Ben will kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you, Juan, again for giving us the chance to give this presentation. And hi to everybody here. We are happy to be here with you today. My name is Ben Claire.
And I'm Nicholas Gill, but I go by Nick.
And on behalf of the Office of Mayor Sam Liccardo, we are giving this 15-minute presentation on wildfire safety in East San Jose. And as a disclaimer, some of this material can be potentially distressing, so feel free to step away for a moment if you feel the need to do so. Next. So for a bit of background, Nick and I are fellows with the California Climate Action Corps, working within the mayor's office. The general goal of our project is to help the residents of East San Jose make their properties into wildfire resilient spaces. And we are doing this by providing information and resources such as these slides on wildfire safety techniques. These techniques mainly include home hardening and defensible space. Home hardening refers to the retrofitting of your house with fire-resistant materials, and defensible space refers to the clearing of vegetation and other flammable materials from your yard. Next. So East San Jose has a fairly prominent wildfire risk. Last year, California in general had its worst wildfire year ever, where wildfires burned a record 4.2 million acres and over 10,000 structures were either damaged or destroyed. Many of you might remember the SCU complex from last year, the acreage of which is pictured on the right, where a wildfire that started in the Santa Cruz Mountains burned over 400,000 acres and encroached into Santa Clara County. Next. So in terms of where is most vulnerable to wildfires in East San Jose, the East Foothills, which includes Alum Rock Park, is especially vulnerable because of the continuous stretches of vegetation in the area. Also, under certain wind conditions, embers can travel tens of miles through the air and end up lighting structures on fire. For example, in the Creek Fire, there were documented cases of embers being carried 8 to 10 miles by the wind and lighting structures on fire before the wildfire flames even got there. Next. So this here is a map of wildfire risk in East San Jose. The blue line indicates the planning area for the East Foothills. The colors correspond to the respective wildfire risk, where green is low, yellow is moderate, orange is high, and red is extreme wildfire risk. So what we can see here is that the western part of East San Jose is generally green or low risk because this is a mainly urban area that, again, is covered in concrete. In contrast, the eastern part of East San Jose has a high or extreme wildfire risk because it is directly located in the East Foothills, an area that has a high density of vegetation. In regards to embers, although the green areas on this map technically have a low wildfire risk, hypothetically, it is possible for winds to blow west and thus carry embers that end up lighting these structures on fire. So we recommend that homes within these areas also implement home hardening and defensible space, again, just for the sake of safety. Next. So what we really want you all here today to know is what can you do to protect your home from wildfires?
Thank you, Ben. So yeah, now I'm talking about home hardening. As Ben mentioned before, home hardening is a form of retrofitting. Specifically, it's the use of specific materials when you're building your home structure so that it has an increased resistance to fire. As you can see in the picture, there are two homes side by side receiving the same conditions of embers, but because one is home hardened, being the one on the right, sorry, it is not burning, but then the one on the left has started burning just because of the embers that have accumulated near the structure. There are many parts of a home that you can home harden, as you can see on the list here, We also have resources that we'll be sharing soon with everyone else, everyone watching, with a much more sophisticated list of information of what other parts of a home you can harden and how to do so correctly. Next was defensible space. Defensible space is a strategy of managing the area around your home to minimize the amount of risk of fire reaching your home. There are three main zones that we use when we talk about defensible space. The first one is the ember-free zone. It goes in every direction around your home from the base of the structure all the way to the red line in the image. This tends to be 0 to 5 feet, and we recommend having no flammable materials, being no plants, no vegetation, no propane tanks, no stacks of wood, etc., as these can all lead to the direct ignition of a home structure if embers accumulate and catch those on fire. The next zone is the lean, clean, and green zone. This zone is typically 5 to 30 feet. In the picture, it would be from the red line all the way to the orange line in every direction of the home again. And in this zone, it's more acceptable and it's safer to have more trees, some bushes, plants, etc. Although it is still very important that this space be very well maintained, that bushes are thinned and trimmed as well as the trees, as these can often be the first things that catch on fire by embers coming from a fire from very large distance even. And if these expand and reach the home, again, the home will catch on fire, and that's what we want to avoid. It's a similar strategy for the reduced fuel zone, being the space that stems from the orange line to the green line, typically 30 to 100 feet in every direction of a home. It's safer to have larger clusters of trees, more bushes, but again, as always, it's important to have the space well maintained. The grass is also a good idea to have it cut at a maximum height of 4 inches to prevent the spread of fire. Now, in case of an emergency, there's a few things we wanted you all to know. First off, the most important thing they can do in this very moment before an emergency happens is registering for local emergency alert systems. In the unfortunate case that an evacuation were necessary, it's important that you have these alert systems, that you are registered for these emergency systems, because in case of a fire, it can happen at any time, and it can actually move in many different directions, seemingly random because of weather conditions and wind conditions. What we want to avoid is having an evacuation route that leads you into the fire or close to the fire. So that's why all evacuation routes are created on a case-by-case scenario based on the current fire conditions, and they're often modified depending on wind conditions changing the direction of a fire. Additionally, we want you all to know about the Ready, Set, Go program, specifically Go Bags. Go Bags are really easy and really useful way to prepare for an emergency. Just by having one backpack for each member of a household, it can contain food, clothes, and water for about 3 days, hopefully, first aid materials, and many more things, as you can see in the picture. You can really customize these things as you like, although it is usually recommended to have at least the clothes, food, water for 3 days, and some first aid materials. If you choose to add rope, water bottles, anything else, it's up to you. There are many resources online that can provide more information about what you might be important for you, depending on your area, etc. And a little bit more about our city resources. Here, we will be sharing this presentation also for everyone after the presentation. So you can press on these links on the slides themselves that will directly lead you to the Santa Clara County Alert System to register for their alert system. We also have here the CAL FIRE emergency text notifications that will let you know about any fires happening locally. And also Twitter and other social media profiles are often ways that people are notified about emergencies before local alert systems, just because that's the world we live in today. Social media is everywhere. So by following the right profiles, you can often get a lead or ahead of the game in terms of being notified of local emergencies. Profiles such as CAL FIRE or CAL OES, which is the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, are good ideas or suggestions of profiles you can follow. Additionally, in times of fire, San Jose offers clean air centers. These are community centers that are adapted and equipped to offer socially distant clean air spaces, and they are also they have water and charging stations for people's convenience. And again, there's more info on that link about those clean air centers. They tend to open when a fire is present. So since there's no fires right now, thankfully we don't have any open. And that was a little foreshadowing for my talk on wildfire smoke. As we all should know by now, that wildfire smoke can be very hazardous. It has serious health implications for anyone who breathes in the smoke. But people who are pregnant, persons who have a history of heart conditions, lung disease, diabetes, the elderly, and children and youth should be especially concerned or careful about their exposure to smoke, as they can have much more exaggerated hazardous effects to their exposure compared to anyone who doesn't belong under one of these categories. Next up, we want to talk a little bit about home vegetation. As I mentioned earlier, we recommend having as little vegetation near your house as possible. But many times people argue that since California has many plants that have adapted to fire, because California has a fire adapted landscape, they often ask which plants might be better or worse to have under in their homes. And the first answer that people don't tend to like is that no matter what plant or tree you have, it will burn under the right circumstances. If there's enough heat, anything can burn. But to help answer their question and help with the concerns, there's this list of questions they can ask yourself about each plant that you have on your property now in case you want to change it, or if you want to look at new plants based on these questions. For example, the eucalyptus tree is a tree that is seen everywhere, and it is not a great tree to have on your property when you're looking at its risk of fire. For example, eucalyptus trees tend to have many oils and waxes in their bark, and they also have a low leaf moisture, so that means that the leaves tend to catch on fire very fast. And all the other questions also bring up red flags for eucalyptus trees, as an example to not have a eucalyptus tree on your property. A little bit about the air quality from wildfire smoke. These are two websites that you can copy paste into your browser, um, be whatever browser you use, to get more information, current information about smoke and air conditions in your area. And Alban can take it away with a talk about prescribed burns.
Thank you, Nick. So one thing that everybody should be aware of, mainly so that there's public support for it, is that prescribed burns are really the most effective way to prevent damaging wildfires. Prescribed burns, also known as controlled burns or cultural burns, are low intensity burns historically performed by indigenous nations in California. These prescribed burns clear underbrush, which in turn prevents catastrophic fires by reducing the fuel load. Prescribed burns also have many other benefits, such as stimulating the growth of plants and fruit. For example, cones that dip from redwood trees in Northern California don't germinate and spread their seeds until they have come in contact with fire. In general, California ecosystems are fire adapted, meaning they actually need fire in order to be healthy. Also, CAL FIRE and the US Forest Service are currently expanding their own prescribed burn programs to treat up to 600,000 acres in California by the year 2025. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. More resources that we have to offer on wildfire safety include a summary of fire safe resources document and a wildfire safety brochure, which we can email to anyone that is interested. And also translations for these documents will be available soon in multiple languages. Our outreach efforts are also extending beyond these presentations, as we will be conducting outdoor door knocking efforts, hopefully within the next few months. Next slide. So again, thank you so much for attending this presentation. We'll be answering questions right now, but feel free to contact either Nick or I at any time at our email addresses, which are listed below here. If you have any further questions or would just like more resources on this topic. Next slide. Great, so we can go ahead and use the Q&A function on Zoom if you have any questions that you would like answered.
Yes, feel free to just pose a question there, and then I will promote you to panelists, audience members, so that you could share your screen or audio.
Thank you, Juan. In the meantime, I just wanted to add one thing that in all transparency, we haven't had the responses that we would have liked from our outreach so far. So we really want to make it well known that fire season is right around the corner, and we want to help people in any way we can now to prevent any damages happening in the near future. Because as I said, fires can happen at seemingly random times. It can be for something as simple as a cigarette butt not being disposed of properly, or even lightning striking, stuff we can't really control. So it's always best to be well prepared when possible.
Well said. And for people's information, fire season usually starts around June. So that'll be in about 2 months.